Okay, sorry.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Chad Allgood. I am the Deputy Director for the Division of Early Childhood Care and Development. Welcome to our information sharing session for today. Hope everyone's having a good Wednesday so far. Several of you have probably have attended our sessions before. For anyone that's new, I'll just kind of explain what we do. We're hosting a series of these information sharing sessions. It gives us an opportunity to share with you updates from our division, and I will spend a few minutes going through some information with you all, and then we will have an opportunity for you all to ask questions. The way that we do the questions is you can enter your questions into the chat, and we will be filling those questions and answering those as we move forward. Before we get started, I'm going to introduce the other staff from DECCD that are on with us today. I have Laura Dixon, who is our policy advisor, and Laura will be helping me with moderate the questions when we get to that section. And then I also have Angela Crockett, who many of you probably know. Angela is the director of our child care payment program, and everyone loves to see her face. So I told her to join us this morning. Also with us, I have
good morning, everyone.
Andrea Sanders, and Andrea is the Principal Deputy Executive Director for the agency, but more importantly, she's my boss. So
I just do whatever needs to be done when it needs to be done, if I can.
And actually, before we get started, did you want to speak to the provider?
I just wanted to say good morning. It's good to be back here with you. I've missed the last few calls, and I am so appreciative of the openness and willingness to have dialogue, and I hope that this is a helpful time for you. So thank you for being here.
So like I said, we'll get started. I'm going to share a fairly big update with you first, and then I'll just share with you some reminders, and then we'll give you all an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. So again, those of you that have been joining us for previous sessions, you know that we have been putting several projects into place to support you all during this time. We are still offering enrollment-based reimbursement to child care providers that are open and caring for children. As of July 1st, we began offering that reimbursement at an enhanced rate, which is approximately 25% above our standard rate. We are also covering parent co-payments that helps alleviate the burden from parents, that financial burden from parents, but it also better ensures that you all are receiving the full reimbursement rate. And then we also opened up our emergency certificates, and we expanded the priority population for those that can receive those emergency certificates beyond just healthcare. So today, I'm very excited to let you all know about a new program that we are offering, and that is, we're calling it our booster shot payment program. And what this payment program represents is a one-time payment that will go to child care payment program approved providers that have active certificates on file. So if you currently are an approved CCPP provider with active certificates, and if you're open and caring for children, you are eligible to apply for the booster shot payment. This payment, and we're actually going to be sending out an email to everyone that gives more details about how this payment is calculated, and what you can look for, like when to expect the payment. how to apply for the payment, when and how to expect the payment. All those details are going to come out in an email, but I did want to give you just, just a high level view of what that's going to look like. This booster shot payment is going to be based on your care capacity. And what care capacity is that is whatever the number of children you're allowed to care for based on Mississippi State Department of Health. So if you're a licensed provider and you have a maximum capacity, your booster shot payment will be based on whatever that maximum capacity is. It will not be based on how many children you have enrolled. It will be based on how many children you could have enrolled. And our purpose for doing this is we wanted to base it on, we're hoping or we're anticipating that we're going to see more people utilizing childcare. And we wanted to make sure that we were basing this payment, like I said, not just on your current enrollment, but what your enrollment could be. We know that as families are going back to work, they've got to have childcare. They've got to have good childcare. And we know that you all, many of you have not shut your doors since the beginning. And then we have others who have shut your doors in an effort to, maintain stay at home, shelter in place to help prevent the spread of COVID. And we want to support all of you, those that have remained open and those that are, beginning to open your doors again and serve these families. The application window for the booster shot payment is August through November of 2020. The email that we send out is going to have a link to the application. It is just a smart form. It's a very short form. It should only take you just a few minutes to fill out. It just has just some basic information that we'll get. For example, when you submit your application, you'll just give us, your name of your center, your provider ID, your address, your email address. And then in just a second, I'm going to review with you all what this money can and cannot be used for. And part of your application will just be you're going to sign what's called an attestation, which just means that you understand and are agreeing to follow the policies that go along with the booster shot payment. So what the booster shot payment can be used for, it's very flexible. It is pretty much for anything operational, your day-to-day operations. For example, you can use it to purchase personal protection equipment, or what we call PPE. You can use it for staff salaries. You can use it for hazard pay for your staff members. You can use it for health and safety supplies. You can use it for food and food supplies for children enrolled at your center. Don't use it to buy food for your own house. Don't do that. That's a no-no. But for your program, Children Literature Program, you can use it for food and food supply expenses. You can also use it to replenish classroom consumable supplies, such as paper, crayons, and, things, curriculum materials that you use. And you can also use it for sanitation equipment, including there are some fairly innovative pieces of equipment out there. There are sanitation cabinets that use UV lighting. There's also some systems out there that use UV lighting and some other methods that are a lot more technical than what my brain can process. That there's evidence that they kill bacteria and germs in your air systems, your HVAC systems. You can use that for this. You can use that money for that as well. What you cannot use the booster shot payment money for, you cannot use it for brick and mortar renovations. So you can't use it to build onto a new classroom or repair your roof or anything of that nature. You also cannot use it to offset parent co-payments. Remember, we are covering parent co-payments, so if you were to use it in that regard, it would be double dipping, which is a no-no. You also cannot use it to purchase real property, so you can't go out there and buy land with it. And then, of course, anything that's not allowable by state or federal laws. Don't break the law. That's not a good thing. We definitely do not advocate that. So that's just kind of a quick summary of the booster shot payments. Of course, if there's any questions about what I've talked about today, we'll get to those at the end of the session. And again, like I said, we will be sending out an email that will be giving very explicit details on all of this and more information for you to use.
Chad, can I say a couple of things?
Yes.
I would just say that this portion of our response to COVID, it's funded by CARES dollars, and the decision to use a portion of it in this manner was based on feedback that we've received from you all through these calls, through emails, and through listening sessions with a group of your leadership. All of the major associations of child care providers have given us feedback and their time on several occasions. And so there's no right answer here. There was a number of ways to use this funding. We did not want this to be something that you had to repay, and we did not want to burden you with a lot of additional tracking or reporting requirements. You will be, of course, it is federal money and it comes with some strings. So you have a choice about whether to accept it. And that choice is exercised when you complete that form online and when you sign that, yes, I agree to these terms and I want to take the money. So if you violate those terms, obviously, just like any other federal money, it would be subject to recoupment. But our intent with this method of delivery was getting the money out quickly, reducing administrative burden for you and for us, while still being compliant with the requirements that come with federal money. We also wanted to give you a lot of flexibility with choice of how to use it. You are small businesses, you know the most about the needs in your particular small business and in your community. This does not supplant the plans to also establish those accounts with shared services for you. That is another program. It is taking longer than we had hoped because of state procurement laws, but the last thing we want to do is give you money and then come take it back later because we didn't follow the right procedures. So our hope is that this will be a good booster shot, something to get you over some humps right now. And, but we're also encouraging you to analyze your business, make smart decisions about what will help you the most. It's a broad range of categories this money can be used for. So we hope that this helps.
Yeah, and I can remember, back when I had to go get my booster shot, I wasn't necessarily excited about it, but I did understand that it would get me ready for school. So some of you may not like, some of you may not like shots or needles, and that's perfectly understood, but just understand that the name for that came, from a good place. So we're not actually going to come out and, try to stick you with needles or anything. So, all right, just a few other reminders. Like I've mentioned a couple of times, we are covering parent co-payments. So just be sure that you are not continuing to charge parent co-payments. Now, as a reminder, the parent co-payment is the portion of their subsidy that parents normally pay. Now, if your center charges a rate that's higher than what the reimbursement is, you're allowed to charge that money, but you cannot charge parents what they would normally have to pay as just part of their subsidy payment. Also, I wanted to remind you that we have our link on our website that you can go to. Be sure that if you have not done so already, if you are open and operating and caring for children, make sure you go to the link that I provided here, which is mdhs.ms.gov/early-childhood-care-development. There's a smart form link. Again, it just takes you maybe a minute at most just to let us know that you are in fact open and caring for children. You can also use this link to upload your training for your CCARE certificate as well. Also wanted to let you know, coming soon, we have a CCARE facts guide that we get a lot. We've been getting a lot of questions that are, of this same type of questions. And the CCARE facts guide, which is a frequently asked questions guide, will be something that not only you can use, but if you have parents that ask you about emergency certificates or anything else, that you can use this. You can point parents in this direction to help answer any questions that they might have as well. Also, one other thing that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned is the funds for the booster shot payment. They can't be used for anything that is covered by like the PPP program, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, the Back to Business Mississippi grant through the Mississippi Development Authority. Some of you may have applied for that. Also the same with the Mississippi Department of Education Pre-K Collaborative Funds. So what that means is these are all programs that are funded by other federal money, and you can't use federal money. It's double dipping. You can't use two pots of money for the same purpose regarding federal money.
But they can buy more PPE.
Yes, correct.
Or pay salaries that weren't previously paid with PPP.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, correct.
So
yes.
One thing we ask on the form, I believe, we are asking on the form to accept the booster shot is how you intend to spend it.
Yes.
We will ask at the end that you close out with a form that tells us how you spent it. And of course, as with any federal funding, you need to keep records of how you spent it. So just keep a file folder with invoices. This shouldn't be overly complicated, but you are subject to monitoring at any point in time when you take federal funding. So we are not looking to come out and catch you doing something wrong. We anticipate in good faith that you will do good things for the children of Mississippi with this money. And, but, you do need to keep a record of how you spend it, and it can't conflict with other federal dollars that you've received.
Okay, with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. And at this point, Laura, I think we can open it up for questions that people may have. Oh, you're still muted. Okay.
So our first question is about the amount of the booster payment and how it's going to be determined.
And we're gonna lay that out in the email that we send to you. We did come up with a formula, and the formula with our CARES money, we allocated a certain percentage of our CARES money for the booster shot payments, which is actually approximately 29% of our CARES funding that we received. And using that, we did allocate a certain amount of money, and we did come up with a formula that we're going to be using to determine how much money you get. I will say, if you have more than one shift, if you offer care for children that, extended hours, 24-hour care, you will receive more money than if you operate just a typical, just a one-shift child care facility.
Can we explain the formula a little bit, or just give them kind of the total dollar amount? We can tell you
Sure.
that
It's
dedicated to this portion of the program.
Yeah, well, the total dollar amount is $13.6 million. And that's approximately 29% of our CARES funding. And, roughly that estimate is going to come out to about $170 per child for full-time, full-day programs. Part-day programs, it comes out to about $85 per child.
So there will be some distinctions between part-time, full-time, and then extended, if you offer care around the clock or a extended schedule, there will be some variations based on that.
Okay, our next question is about how the money will be dispersed. Will it be delivered in a check? And if, as a follow-up to that, if it's going to be a check, will it be separate from their regular subsidy payment check they receive?
So as much as I would love to do an Ed McMahon and show up with balloons and flowers and all that at all your centers, like back in the day, unfortunately, I can't do that. So it will be a check, and it will be a separate check from your subsidy check. But it will be.
So will it come the same way the subsidy check does?
It will come the same way that your subsidy check comes, yes.
Okay, and can the booster shot money be used to pay bills or for air filter systems?
The air filter systems, which is that classification of like that sanitation equipment, yes. As far as bills, I don't want to just say yes or no. It really depends on what that bill is for. If it falls within that list of what I gave you. Laura, would like utilities, would that be classified as like a real property expense? Do you know?
So providers can use these funds for anything that's regularly allowed with their other subsidy money that they receive from the office. So if they are allowed to use it for use their regular subsidy check for something, they will be allowed to use these CARES funds for that as well.
So I guess the big distinction is, back to what Chad said about if you already paid for it with PPP money or some other federal source. And so that would mean, if you buy an air filtration system for your center, that's what fits squarely within the purposes of this money. And, if that's something that helps your center stay open and provide safer care, that is a good use of the money. However, and I don't know what PPP can be used for, but if you also bought a filtration unit and you show that receipt to justify your PPP expenses, you can't use it to justify this funding. So, it's not that you can't use it for the same thing. You just can't use it for you can use it for the same type of thing. You can't use it for the exact same thing. And that, that's fairly common sense. So, but the uses are pretty broad. So you can't pay bills that are unrelated to your child care program, but bills that you normally pay for your child care center that are part of running a child care program, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, would all be basically within the intent of this funding, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, our next question is moving away from the booster payment conversation and asking about payment for school-age children doing virtual school and at the center full-time.
So is it asking if we will be doing that? Is that the question?
Yes, it's asking what we'll be doing to help parents in those situations.
So up until like last week, what the federal language said was that we could not use money for that purpose. But we have since then received approval that we can use CCDF dollars to support that function. And we're actually having to look at our funding to look at what that would cost if we move from part-time to full-time certificates for those school-age children. We're also what we contemplated doing is sending out a very brief survey to our CCPP parents to ask them how many of them would probably be wanting to move to a full-time. This is completely uncharted water in that regard, and we don't really have. We need to collect some more information from parents because we want to make sure that that we can provide the funding for that if we do decide to fund those school age certificates. Those of you that may be offering school age care. I will say that I acknowledge this is a real need. There are a lot of parents out there that if for their children not being able to attend school physically it causes a lot of problems for them. With them trying to go back to work and everything. We are very much aware of that, and that is this issue is top of our radar. So we are talking about that, and we will get more information about that out to you all very soon.
So I will say we are pretty well maximizing the funding that's been budgeted to us with the plan prior to the OCC coming out with that new guidance. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room in our budget. And additionally, there is a tracking problem with applying that in Mississippi. Every school district is doing something different, and the money can only be legitimately used for those days that school district is using distance learning. And so, my son's school right now, my son's going to school every other day. He's at home doing distance learning today, I hope. So, there's a complicated hurdle to overcome with being able to document that not only was the child at your center doing distance learning with their school, but their school was closed for in-person learning that day. Additionally, there are schools that give parents a choice. And so there's some concern about that gray area of if the parent just chose to distance learn, does that fall? It's a complicated question, but it is certainly something that we know is a big need. And we are evaluating it, and we would welcome, if you want to send us feedback about that, that certainly would be considered as part of our decision making.
Okay, our next question is about back to the process for the payments, and it says when reporting that a facility is open, what date should be indicated if the center never closed?
If your center never closed, I would just, I would put.
So I'm sorry. So I can just speak to the way the application's set up, if that's okay. Sure. So if your center never closed, you'll have the option to enter that you're currently open, or the application asks if you are currently open, or if you have a future date for reopening. If you're currently open, you just make that selection and continue through the application. The only time you would need to enter in a date is if you have a future reopening date.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So what type of documentation will they need to keep and or provide?
The expenses, I would say Andrea mentioned earlier, like keeping a file folder, so receipts of things that you pay for using this funding, just on the chance that, you know, you may be monitored for this. That will be important to keep that. And I would literally, you could just keep a file folder that said, you know, booster shot payment purchases. And if
Or
you,
in your business ledger, your general
Right.
ledger, you know, the same way you would track other expenses for your
yeah,
business.
and what I was going to say, like if some of you use budgeting software, there usually that software has ways, like I said, with your ledgers, and you can even tie like pictures of receipts to certain ledger items if you wanted to do it that way. If you wanted to scan those in, you could do that as well.
Is there a follow-up close out form?
Laura, did we say like at the end? I know we had said what they plan to utilize the funds for. Do we have like a closeout, like once they've completed the purchasing, or is it just the application?
It's only an application process. If we do require any additional documentation, all that will be laid out in the email that we send to you all. All of the instructions will be included. Okay, so our next question is that this provider has some families that have had emergency certificates for 3 months and are now being terminated, and others are being approved, and she's asking why that is.
The emergency certificates were designed to be short term. They're good for 90 days. And at that point, the family has the opportunity to transition to a 12-month certificate if they want to. But those emergency certificates are only valid for 90 days. And if new families are, as new families are applying, that's why they're being approved. Because those other certificates, like I said, at the end of the 90-day window, they do terminate.
And that is because that was a short-term, temporary injection into the child care, both in trying to inject money into your centers, as well as supporting people who traditionally don't qualify for CCDF funding. But we also have to reserve enough funding to serve those families that traditionally qualify. And so while it's not a perfect solution, it accomplishes what we set out to accomplish. And we realize that it's hard that those certificates end, but we're dealing with a limited pot of money. And so if they qualify for a 12-month certificate, if they meet the eligibility requirements, we are providing them with notices so that they can seamlessly transition over to a 12-month certificate. So they should be receiving notices well in advance of the day the 90-day certificate terminates. You should also be receiving a copy of that notice the same way you would for regular certificates. And am I right about that, folks, my folks?
Yes.
Okay. And so, and yes, there will be some people who would not otherwise qualify for CCDF funding, and it will, that 90-day funding that was a temporary support will end for them. The same way unemployment benefits have to, there has to be a transition time when it ends. If additional funding comes out from Congress for childcare in response to COVID, or if they see fit to raise our funding award for the regular program this fall, then we will be looking at some different ways to use that money depending on what the need is at the time. But right now we have budgeted our money pretty tightly. And it's important for the long-term success of this program and for rebuilding the economy in Mississippi that we have money left over for these 12-month certificates. They're vital to your businesses. Those are the stable, long-term sources of income, and those are the certificates that allow parents to invest in plans for a 12-month period. So I'm very committed to making sure that our budgeting always reserves enough to sustain the program long-term.
Okay, our next question is looking at standard payments and whether or not the center will be paid based on enrollment or attendance.
That's based on enrollment.
When you say standard, can we get some clarification on what we mean by standard?
I use the word standard to indicate our regular subsidy payments, not the booster shot payment money.
Okay, right. Your regular subsidy payments, those that are on the 12-month, those are enrollment based.
Okay.
We did that through September
right.
30th, and we should be getting guidance out to you by the end of this month on
If we're going to
whether that will
extend
be
that.
extended.
Yeah.
Okay, our next question is, if school-age students are being taught by a certified teacher inside of the center, how are we paid? Chad, you may want to speak to that. I would need a little bit more information about these conditions and what is meant by a certified teacher, I think, before we could give a complete answer to that, because there are some really specific rules related to how we can use this money with school-age children. So if the person that submitted that question could give us some clarification in the comments, that would be really helpful in making sure that we're able to give you a full answer to that question. Chad, did you want to add anything, or?
No, I agree, because it really depends on what the specific situation is, in regards to that. Like, if is that is that done through an agreement with the local school system? Is that just something that you're doing on your own? We just need a little bit more information, I think.
Okay, that same provider says that they have students who are not doing distance learning but are at their center. And that ties back to those really specific rules that the feds have issued about how we can use funding for school-age children. I can tell you what I can speak to that from a policy side, in that the feds have indicated that that we cannot issue federal funds to providers to pay for services that are offered by the schools. So, because that's another set of federal dollars, and we can't supplant that. So, if a child's school is open, and they are at your center full time, and you are providing care for them, that is part of what we're having to look at in terms of what we can afford to do with our budget. But the feds are pretty clear that if federal dollars are being paid to offer that service, we cannot also give you federal funds to have you do it. So I know that's not exactly clear. Maybe it may not be a really clear answer for you, but that is the guideline from the federal office at this time.
Well, and doing so would require us to change our policy, right? Which we have not done yet. We do have that new guidance that gives us some authority to change our policy, but that is part of what we're evaluating right now. So our our dollars at this time cannot go for that purpose. And it would require us to make a policy change to implement that, right, Laura?
Yes, it would.
So you will receive affirmative information from us. We will put that out in the form of a notice, the way we have with every other policy change, if we make a decision to do that. But that gets back to that very complicated tracking issue of how do we ensure or have some reasonable assurance that we're paying for care for a child whose school is in fact closed for on-site instruction on that particular day. And like I said before, I think that we would also have to have some additional funding coming our way to know that we could afford to do that.
Okay, our next question is whether or not providers need a separate account for the booster payment.
That's really up to you. As long as you're keeping record of those expenses, as we talked about earlier, if you want to set up a separate account, that's really your call. If that's something that would make it easier for you, then that would be great. But ultimately, that's going to be your decision to make.
That's probably a best practice. Might be a luxurious practice for some. That might not be feasible. So no, it's not required. It is probably the cleanest way to demonstrate where the money went and that it wasn't also used to justify PPP money or something like that. But no, that is not a requirement.
Okay. Okay, just bear with me, you guys. I'm trying to go through the comments that we have here.
Let me make a couple of comments while you're looking, Laura. I know that many of you have read in the news that the governor's office and the Department of Health are working together to provide testing for all public school teachers and or teachers. I'm not even sure of the exact language yet. And school staff and maybe children, that they are rolling out a very robust testing program to ensure safety with some other measures that the governor announced this past week. We have been working closely with them to advocate that that be extended to early child care providers. I think the intent is for that to happen. It is not in place yet. They have concerns about their ability and their capacity. So Dr. Dobbs right now has limited it to K through 12, but just know that we are working very closely with all of those entities, and our goal is to have those same testing and tracking and nursing services available for early child care providers at some point this fall. And I think the will is there. It's just a matter of getting the right staff, enough of them up to speed, and the funding. So I'm very optimistic that we can work that out.
Okay. Angela, could you remind me, because I, for some reason, cannot keep this in my head. I think that it's that I have a sense of it, but just since you're the official holder of this knowledge, what's the turnaround time for receiving the C-Care training certificate after you have completed your training? How long should you go without one before you reach out for some help with that?
The keeper of that is our partner, MCSE. And normally Alicia's group, it takes a couple of days for them to get the information to the provider. What I have found when I've had to reach out on a provider's behalf, the information that maybe the provider has entered might be a letter or a number or a name. Maybe they use their maiden name instead of their married name. Sometimes it's inconsistencies. And so when they send the information out, it's not reaching the provider. So so if they haven't received it in, I would say maybe 3 days at a minimum, then they should reach out to Alicia, which the information will be on the FAQs with the contact person, Alicia Westbrook, and she would be happy to get the information you need to submit to provide you your training certificate for CCARE.
Is that information going to them through email, Angela, or is it going snail mail?
That's going through email.
Okay.
I guess when they enter into the site to take the training, it's capturing that information.
Okay.
And yeah.
And
So
we'll
be very
say,
careful
yeah.
about how you enter the characters in your email address.
And also,
Yes.
when you log on to take the training, there are 2 email addresses that show up should you have any difficulties. Make note of those because those are the same contacts that you'll make to get the certificates. Those same 2 folks, and one of them is Alicia, and the other is one of their curriculum folks. And just make sure when you log on, just make note, write those email addresses down. Because if you do have any trouble, those are the folks that can help get you your certificate.
Okay. Let's see. I want to just point out that it's always really helpful when providers can learn from each other, and so I'm enjoying seeing some of the crosstalk in the chat box where folks are providing information or comments or guidance to their colleagues in here. That's always great.
Have y'all told them about the survey that's going out?
No, we didn't mention that on.
Okay. The next question is another one for Angela. Angela, what is the turnaround time for processing of new emergency certificates?
The process time has been for emergency certificates has been 1 to 2 days, as long as the parent has provided the information. Once we expanded the group of essential workers this in August, we have had a abundance of applications. So it could take up to a week to get your CCARE certificate, but we are working those applications first. We just have a lot of them, and we're working as quickly as possible to get those processed. But it's about a week now since we've expanded that essential group. So please make sure that I would just advise that when your parents are submitting the documentation, that they are submitting everything that's required, because if we have to send it back, it delays it until you can get what is needed. So if you have a job that you're having to provide more information on, please let that be in the letter. If you're trying to describe what the duties are to match the job, to say that you are essential or you fit this particular job that we decided was in this new group. So just be mindful of what is being sent in, because sometimes that can cause delays.
The expanded list of folks that are eligible for the temporary emergency certificates is on the CCAC website. It is also on the CCare page of the MDHS website. If you need to go there and view it, that was one of our questions.
I will say about that list, we know it's not all inclusive. We had to draw a line somewhere. Our goal was to try to expand the list of personnel who might not typically qualify for a CCD certificate, but right now are really hurting because the economy, and reduce emphasis on those personnel who probably are making enough money that, you know, while they're hurting, everyone's hurting, they're not, you know, afraid of not having food on the table or a livelihood. So our attempt was to place emphasis on lower paid individuals that are, you know, really just working their hearts out right now and struggling. So we know it's not everybody, and we wish we had enough money to pay for everybody. It was a policy decision to try to expand, but you know, understanding that there are not enough CCDF dollars to pay for every single person who could use a 90-day certificate right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got time for just a couple more questions.
Are these calls helpful for all of you? Are they continuing to be helpful? Okay.
So we're getting some positive answers for that. So Chad, could you clarify, I think maybe it would be helpful to clarify the who would be eligible for full payment per child versus who's eligible for part payment per child.
We're talking about for the booster shots,
Yes.
the booster shot payments. Yeah, your full payment, that's going to be for any providers that provide what's classified as full-time child care. And those are the standard. We're using what Department of Health child care licensure classifies as full-time. Part-time is going to be like half-day programs. It's going to be children that are only there part-time. They're only enrolled part-time. That's what I mean by part-time care. So they're not there by what, like I said, by what we consider as full-day standards. So like half-day programs, if you only do like after-school care, if you only provide before and after-school care, those are all part-time programs. Full-time programs are those child care programs that offer a full day of care for children.
Okay, so I want to remind everyone that this session was recorded. It will be posted on the CCAC website and can be viewed at any time that you need to, in case you want to go back and hear something again, or maybe you came in a few minutes late and want to go back and hear the opening remarks. Just want to remind you that this recording will be available by the end of the week. It'll be out on the CCAC website by the end of this week, if anybody needs to view that.
Yeah, I had a couple of things I wanted to say really quick before we end. So the recording will be available on the website. Any of you that came in a little bit late that may have kind of caught the tail end of the booster shot discussion, the earlier recording, provides all the details about that. Again, we will be sending out an email that will explain the booster shot payment, including how it's calculated, how you apply all the requirements, including documentation you may need to keep. And we may even put some pointers on there for how you can keep up with your expenses as well. The other thing that I wanted to mention, we've been moving full throttle since the beginning of COVID-19, and kind of as a check of our services to kind of see how we're doing, it's kind of determine if we're really being as responsive as we hope we are. We have sent out a survey to child care providers about services that you may have registered for, and it's a variety of different types of services, ranging from different types of training, technical assistance that you may have registered for. And we want to know, like, if you've registered for it, what you've actually received, and how useful the services that you've received have been to your program. The survey may take you a total of 5 minutes from start to finish. If you all could please do that, and anyone that's not on this session that you know of that also has a child care program, if you could let them know to complete that survey, we would really greatly appreciate it. Like I said, it gives us an opportunity to really look at what we're doing. And it's easy for me to sit here and say, yes, we're doing this, 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 and this, and it all sounds great. But if, we really need feedback from you all to know if what we're putting in place is actually helping you. And if you could all just take a few minutes and give us that feedback, we would be very, very appreciative of that.
When does that survey?
Did it go out last week, Angela, or did we send it out last week, or are we planning to send it out this week?
It went out, Laura sent it out on Friday.
Okay.
And I think she resent it out again on, was it yesterday, Laura?
Yes, Monday.
Okay.
Monday.
You only need to complete it once.
Yeah, just one time.
And we intend, just like we're having these calls every 2 weeks, because it's important to us to communicate with you and allow you to communicate with us. We will periodically use tools like that. We will try to give you a heads up when they're coming. But we intend to be much more accessible, and we want your feedback. So I hope that you will just take that 5 minutes and send us any information that you think will help us make better decisions in the future about how we invest this money to grow the child care workforce and support working families.
We'll leave the session going for a few more minutes. If any of you didn't get to your questions, if you want to enter your questions in the chat, we'll try to get to those after the session. On behalf of DHS and DECCD, thank you all so much for taking your time to join us this morning. We do really, we all value, I myself really value this opportunity to interact with you in this way. And as Andrea said, we're committed to remaining accessible. And we want to make sure that, you all have an opportunity to ask questions, to give us input, and we're definitely going to keep this going. So thank you all. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thanks.
We decided as a group, but they give us the committee, or communication, team, give you what the thought is, and then you can take it from there. I hope so. We had fun the last 2 years.
Well, it is sort of fun and morale building, and it is pleasant to come in and see some decorations and stuff, so. It's all right. I know.